All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mick's Got No Nuts, the Nut-Allergy podcast, the podcast where we explore real stories about life with peanut and tree nut allergies. I've done a couple episodes already, but today will be my first episode with a parent who has a very, very young child with a nut allergy. And just to kind of remind everyone, this is a podcast exploring what life is like for people with nut allergies or people living around nut allergies. So if you ever want to be a guest on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to Mick's Got No Nuts on Facebook, YouTube, where this is going to be posted, or Instagram if you want to share your story or your experience with everyone in the community. So for today, we have Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Hi,
Sam, do you mind kind of introducing yourself a little bit and telling maybe where you're from?
no problem. Yeah, I am Sam. I'm from Union, Missouri. I am a teacher and I have a son with a peanut and egg actually allergy, as well as
Oh,
potentially tree nuts as well.
oh, okay. So peanuts, eggs, and maybe tree nuts. So,
Do you want to
well,
explain that a little bit
I
more?
am curious. Tell me about
Yeah.
the maybe tree nuts first.
So we know for sure peanuts because of his reaction, and we know for sure
Mhm.
eggs because of his reaction. And then we got subsequent blood tests and all of that fun stuff.
Mhm.
I went ahead then and asked for tree nuts. Our first allergist told us no. He said, well, peanuts and tree nuts are very different. And I was like, yeah, I understand that. However, I know
Mhm.
they sometimes go hand in hand, and I'd rather know from blood work versus finding out the hard way, like I did with peanuts.
Mhm.
Our second allergist went ahead and just had the whole thing done. She did, peanuts, tree nuts, and he ended up testing positive for four peanuts. So pistachio, macadamia
Yeah.
nut, Brazil nut, and cashew. And so then we had a skin test this last December, and he passed the skin test. So we actually go in for an oral food challenge next week to
Oh,
see if he reacts to them. He's been okay with almond
okay.
and hazelnut, but the other ones aren't
Interesting.
really like easy to try. Um,
Yeah.
and after he, it could be a false positive potentially, but
Mhm.
we're not going to take that risk. So I like that it's going to be in a controlled setting just in case.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I definitely want to talk more about that. But I do want to kind of take a step back. So your son is, how old is your son?
He's 3. He just turned
He-
3.
He's 3. Okay. And can you share his name or are we keeping his name
I
confidential?
was just gonna, I wasn't gonna share his name
Okay, that's fine.
just
No,
for
no
his
pressure. So,
anonymity.
okay. So, I'd like to know kind of the story of when your son first found out he had a peanut allergy. Sounds like was the first thing. Is that correct?
Correct. So he had had peanuts a couple of times before, not a bunch. He was not really great at eating baby food. Like he hated it, and he would almost gag at
Okay.
everything. So
Oh.
one day it was like April, and he also has very bad environmental allergies. Like he'll like kind of get watery eyes and runny nose.
Mm,
And that time of year for sure here in Missouri is when everything's blooming. So
hmm.
I gave him some waffles and a little bit of a smear of peanut butter on it. And that's what I'd always done with his older sister. And
Yeah.
he just he started rubbing his eyes. His eyes became really watery. He was really fussy. And I thought, oh, well,
Hmm.
maybe he needs an early nap. Like maybe he's starting to get sick. His
Hmm.
nose started running. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. But okay. So I took him into the bedroom and was trying to put him down for a nap. And then I noticed he started having like squeaky breathing. And then he
Oh.
got a rash behind his neck. Um, I should have rushed him to the ER, but being that I had no clue. So I call my
Mm,
mom and I'm like, this is really weird. Do you hear this? And she was like, give him Benadryl right away. And then
mm,
just really watch him. Again, I should have taken him to the ER. Now I know that. But I gave him Benadryl and that helped in that moment. But I mean, we're talking maybe like a little, like a fingertip worth of peanut butter that he had
yeah.
actually put into his body. So
Hmm.
yeah, then we went forward with blood testing and all of that, and just nixed all peanut butter, all peanut items.
So that's interesting. So my first takeaway is that you didn't know exactly maybe what to do right away. So does that mean that maybe this is kind of the first run-in with nut allergies that you've had in
Yeah,
your life?
Absolutely. I've had students with allergies before,
Hmm.
but that was, every reaction is just so different. And so
Yeah.
like his reaction to egg is so much different than his reaction to peanuts. And so
Oh.
I think it just also depends on the person, or not even the person, just the instance. Like your guest on your first show said every time is different, and which is kind of
Hmm.
scary because you don't know what to expect.
Yeah. So the time you gave your son, and your son, how old was your son when you first gave him that peanut
Freshly
butter?
one,
Okay,
like
one. So was
maybe.
that okay? Was that the first time he's ever had peanut butter too?
No, he had it a
No.
couple of times before. Like we would do a little bit, they say, early exposure, early
Hmm.
exposure. So we would do a little bit like on our finger and let him lick it, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's
It might have been the
interesting.
first time that he had it on something. I couldn't tell you, but I would imagine he had had it at least like upwards of four times.
That's really interesting to me. So there must be, I mean, I'm no allergist, right? But there must be some sort of like significant development at that age where four times they've had your son's had it before, and all of a sudden the fifth time there's an extreme
Nothing.
reaction.
Or was it I didn't know the earlier symptoms
Oh,
and it was full blown anaphylaxis the next time. I don't know if he was
oh,
having, like a rash or maybe watery eyes and I just didn't notice it because I didn't know what to look for.
oh.
Um, I really don't know, but it was really
That's an
scary.
interesting question. Yo, I can imagine. So your mom, right, told you to give your son Benadryl.
hmm
What was kind of the aftermath of giving him Benadryl? What happened after that?
Um, I want to say I mean, the squeaky breathing kind of stopped. Well, it stopped. And then I just watched him like a hawk the rest of the day. I contacted his
Yeah.
pediatrician and then got in with the allergist. But yeah,
Hmm.
I wish I would have taken him to the ER and done that because it was, obviously his breathing was impacted.
Hmm. And I want to give you some props, if that means much to you. That like you did try to introduce nuts to him, to peanuts to him, and still
Yeah.
something did happen with the evidence suggesting that he might be okay, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, after that happened, how did you then approach food in general? Because he was 1 years old, peanut allergy. Did he know he had the egg allergy yet?
No, we did not. We,
Okay.
I wish I would have kind of gone with my gut on it. The allergist, after the fact, he kind of started, we thought it was texture because he didn't like anything. He gagged on
Mhm.
everything, but he would like vomit when he had egg. And then if it
Oh.
was baked in anything, he would vomit like an hour later. And finally, I went to the allergist and I was like, listen, this is kind of what I'm seeing. If I give him scrambled eggs, which is supposed to be one of the easiest things for them to eat, he has labored
Mhm.
breathing. I'm not really comfortable with this. Can we
Yeah.
get testing? And he blew me off. He was like, nope, he doesn't need testing. We have a lot of food allergies in my family,
Mm.
um, on my side of the family. So I was like, food allergies run in our family.
Mm.
I just think that we should get tested. And he was like, nope, I don't think so. And so I pushed enough and
Yeah.
he got the testing and he's allergic to it across the board, like baked, raw, cooked, all of it. And
Wow.
the reaction is different. Like sometimes he'll have labored breathing if it's warm. If he eats it, he will immediately projectile vomit, or if it's baked, he'll vomit later. So it's just a different reaction than I was used to seeing for peanuts,
Yeah.
but still very allergic.
That's very interesting. I obviously it's not Mick's got no eggs, right? It's Mick's got no nuts, so I can't
Right.
tell you the symptoms of egg allergies per se. But it is interesting that it's significantly different. So you mentioned then that he got tested for tree nuts, but not allergic to every tree nut, which is
Right.
interesting. And can
Which
you
is
remind me
very
again which nuts that he's allergic to?
pistachio, cashew, macadamia nuts, and Brazil nuts.
Wow, I've never heard that before, where you're allergic to some tree nuts and not others. That's super interesting. Now, question for you, even though the allergist says that he could have, say, almonds, do you give him almonds?
Yes. So the first allergist had said, don't just feed him a little bit of it and see what
Mm,
happens, which we very quickly switched to a different allergist. But we did try almond butter, and I mean, that's what he lives off of now is
Hmm.
almond butter. Like we do almond butter and jellies. We did some butter and jelly for a while. He didn't really like the texture.
Mm.
So almond butter is our go-to. We'll do
Mm.
hazelnut every now and then, but it's not a fan favorite.
That I personally can relate because I knew when I was growing up, sometimes my parents would give me sunflower butter, and I
Mhm.
I couldn't stand it. So I sympathize at least a little bit there. I've been told peanut butter is very tasty, but I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Um, so another question for you. So, and can you reiterate, is your son is the only one in your immediate life, friends and family with a nut allergy?
Well, my grandma with the nut allergy, yes. Now that
Okay.
they took like coconut off that tree nut list, my
Yeah,
nephew is tree nut. Well, what is coconut?
it's coconut. Okay.
Yeah, and a slew of other things.
So so we'll say for this point that your son is the only person in your immediate life that has a nut allergy. Do you feel like your family, it sounds like your family's familiar with allergies. Some are not. Do you feel like
Hmm.
your family has been very accommodating for your son and his sensitivity to nuts?
Yes, as much as they can be. I think they just err on the side of caution and they just
Hmm.
don't give him stuff. We always
Yeah.
bring our own food to everything.
Hmm.
We just and then if grandparents are watching, my husband's mom will just text me, "Hey, is this safe?"
Mm.
And well, she waits and waits for me to give her the go ahead, and
Yeah.
which I really appreciate.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Now, what is kind of the range of sensitivity for your son's nut allergy? So like for me, for example, if I someone eats a peanut butter sandwich right next to me, I'll be fine. It's like literally it has to be in my mouth, right?
Right.
Is that the same for your son, or is he a little more sensitive?
We've never tested it
Oh,
because once we found out he had a peanut allergy, we got rid of everything peanut in the house.
makes
Um,
sense.
and I will say he's had exposure to someone eating it and then touching something, and he got hives from that.
Oh, really?
Um, and I would imagine if he would have put his hands in his mouth, we would have had a worse reaction.
Hmm.
But as far as, and he's really sensitive to cross contamination, we learned the hard way. Not He didn't go into anaphylaxis, but he did start getting hives, and we couldn't pinpoint what it was because
Mm.
everything, I I vet everything very, very
Yeah.
strictly. I call companies, make sure that it's not run on the same line. I verify it. This company said that it was run on a peanut and egg free line. And then I called about another item, and they were like, "Oh no, we can't actually verify that it's anything that we have
Ugh.
is run on a peanut and egg free line." I was like, "But I have an email from you guys stating that it is." And then I kind of researched into it a little bit more, and other parents had the same problem that this company and their kid had gone into anaphylaxis because of
Ugh.
cross contamination.
Yeah.
So we were lucky that it was only hives, but I mean,
Yeah.
it was a bar that he had every day. Like, how hard it is to find on the go snacks that are tree nut, peanut free. And I thought we found one, and it turns out it was not.
Really? They snuck the may contain label in there or what?
They did not have a may contain label, but when I
Oh.
called, because if they don't have a may contain label, I always call and I say, this is what I'm looking for. And they said, no, it's made on a peanut and egg free line. And then it actually wasn't. Whoever I spoke to was not
Then
knowledgeable and didn't really know.
yeah, and that's definitely a frustration that I've had, which kind of prompted me to do what I'm doing, is
Hmm.
because the may contain label is really just a legal protection for the
Hmm.
company. They don't have to do anything,
Yep.
right? And and it's really a shame that so many people are so sensitive to that, and yet these companies don't do anything. And
Hmm.
hopefully one day that I'll succeed and be able to do
Right.
what we're looking
Absolutely.
for, right? Um, but it's amazing the limited amount of options out there. So I would like to ask you, what kind of snacks are your go-to now? I assume that you and your son now, maybe your husband, you and your son, kind of have like the same diet or consumed foods because you wouldn't want to eat a nut around him anyway, right? So
Right.
what kind of are your go-to snacks, for example? What do you typically go for?
So he has his own shelf in our house of
Oh, he
safe
does.
snacks.
Lucky guy.
Reach and arms reach that he can get to, and he knows that
Okay.
everything on there is safe. But we always have him ask, like, is this safe? Because we're really just
Mm,
trying to instill that we always have to ask, just even if we think that it's safe, it might not be.
mm.
And so I don't know if we can say brands or anything like that, but we shop at a specific store. Can I say the store's name?
It's up to you. I don't think
Okay.
they're watching.
Um, we like to shop at Aldi because they're really good at labeling for things.
Mhm.
So we do things like turtles. The egg really limits a lot of what we,
That's
because like
tough. Yeah,
peanuts
it's
and
tough.
tree nuts, I feel like there's there's only so much that that's in, but eggs and everything. So we do like made good bars that are made in a dedicated facility, things that we know that are going to be in a dedicated facility, or a brand that we trust to label for may contains.
Hmm.
We've learned the hard way to check the label every time though, because what's safe last week might not be safe this week. And
Yeah.
I just have to get in the habit of checking. Like my husband checked a bar the other day and was like, has this always said may contain peanuts? And I was like, no, it sure hasn't.
Ugh,
That's really stinky because that was one of his favorite things to eat.
ugh, yeah. You mentioned that he will ask you, right, if something is safe to eat.
We're working
What
on it,
was
but yeah.
We're working on it. So that was what I was going to ask you. So what has been the process of teaching him about have him having to be careful?
So we've always told him, you have a peanut and egg allergy. Didn't really get into the tree nuts just because that was a newer thing.
Mm,
But typically anything that tree nuts that, kind of go hand in hand, I feel like, with
yeah.
the peanuts.
Do,
And so we don't have tree nut stuff in the house anyway, but except for
yeah.
almonds. And we just have always said, okay, we have to check the label and make sure. And then his sister is a really big advocate for him and is always
Oh,
like,
that's
we have to
nice.
check the label and make sure. And so we're trying to get him in the habit, even though obviously he can't read yet, but check the label. It's only safe if mommy and daddy give it to you, because other people just don't know. They think, oh, I look at the label and it doesn't say peanut, it doesn't say tree nuts, it doesn't say eggs, but they don't realize that companies don't have to put a may contain statement on there. And so I'm really leery if they don't have a may contain, because I just call. I call every time, just because I don't want to be in a situation where we're having, going into anaphylaxis because of just a small amount of something. And we just don't take
Hmm.
those chances.
Yep. Yep. Now, is your son in school yet, or not quite yet?
We are transitioning out of an in-home facility, and he's
Okay.
starting preschool, public school preschool,
Oh.
in August. So his babysitter also had a peanut allergy,
Oh,
so I
really?
did
Okay.
not have to worry. I
That's
had
good. That's
no
very good.
fears at all. Yes,
That's
it was
good.
really just a godsend.
Yeah.
But now we're venturing into the world of preschool where they can bring in their food, and I think we might go the route of a 504, just because, which is just, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a plan for medical, and like an IEP would be for educational purposes. A
Okay.
504 is the plan for medical purposes.
Hmm.
And it would just give us that peace of mind of, this is what has to be followed. Um, he's just so young that I'm nervous about him taking someone else's food or someone sharing,
Yeah.
and just toddlers having their hands in their mouth after they eat. I'm
Yeah.
very leery of the cross contamination potential there.
Yeah. And I understand that. I know that I think at least one, possibly two instances of the last couple episodes I've done where there's been an incident where the person I interviewed when they were younger was given a food by a friend, and the friend said, "Oh yeah, there's no nuts,
Right.
so you shouldn't assume that there are." But then of course something happens, right?
Yeah.
And so, is there? And the 504 is actually relatively new to me.
Uh-huh.
Do you mind kind of explaining that a bit more?
I don't know a bunch about it. I'm a special education teacher, so I can tell you all you want to know about IEPs. 504s are run typically by like our counselors, but
Mm,
it is for a medical purpose. So, like if a kid has a seizure disorder,
mm,
and they need certain things in place in their classroom, they would get a 504. if a kid has an allergy of some sort and needs accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
So basically accommodation. So like wiping the desk down,
Mm-hmm.
a peanut-free classroom, things like that, that
Mm-hmm.
are in a legally binding document saying you have to follow these things. It's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And it and I know that some schools are peanut-free. Our school is not, and so it just gives me a lot of anxiousness
Mm-hmm.
with his age. Once he gets older, I think it'll be better because we do teach him, to advocate for himself, and we are teaching him. But he's 3, and he still wants what everybody else has, and
Yeah.
that's hard. Like we had a birthday party this weekend, and he wanted the cookies, and I was like, honey, I just don't know if they're safe for you. I have to call. So my husband ran to the store and got him cookies that we know are safe for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a tough one too. All the kids around him are enjoying something,
Hmm.
I assume, and then he just kind of feels left out. That's yeah, that's tough. I feel for your son. I know so much fun in the world that
No.
unfortunately involves peanuts and tree nuts.
Yep.
um, so are there the school that you're going, you can share as much or as little as you'd like, but I'm curious on the school you're going to, are there nut-free classrooms? Are there nut-free zones? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I'm sure you're not the only
Hmm.
parent, right, with
Right.
this a similarly aged kid who are going into the real world, kind of the real world, and have to be uber cautious. Can you tell me a little bit about that, perhaps?
So for preschool, unfortunately, they all eat in the classroom.
Yeah.
And there's not, they said that they could do like a separate area for him, things like that, which I think is a great idea. Like I said, my fear is mostly just the cross contamination of toddlers, messy, like
Yeah.
it's going to get on their pants. It gets everywhere, which is why
Yeah.
we nixed peanuts in the house completely because our daughter she's 2 years older than him. And I mean, she eats things and it gets on her forehead. And you're just like, how did you do that? But in the cafeteria, they have separate allergy tables.
Okay.
So they typically sit with um, I think they typically sit with not the people that have brought their lunch because if you bring your lunch, it could be contain peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
But the school doesn't serve anything with peanut butter.
Mm.
I'm not sure about tree
Okay.
nuts, to be honest, but I know they don't serve anything with peanuts.
Okay. Do you think um when your son goes to school and the opportunity for tree nuts arises, like let's just say, I'm thinking like a trail mix pack, for example, right? It might
Hmm.
have some tree nuts that might be safe for him, but some are not. Do you think like he's aware of the difference between, say, an almond or another tree nut that he is allergic to, or is that maybe like not quite yet?
Oh, not at all, not yet.
Okay.
I think once we do this food challenge, if he reacts, then we'll know. Okay, this is another thing to add to the list for him. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we would just nix all tree nuts because most things say may contain tree nuts. It doesn't
Doesn't
specifically
specify.
say, yeah. And
Yeah.
so I would say if it was almond butter, like, well, we would teach him like almond butter is safe. However, trail mix is going to have the potential for everything else. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really know how almonds are. We don't really get them. So I don't know if it says on the back like may contain other tree nuts or not. But if it was just that
Yeah.
and it didn't may contain, I might say like this is safe because of the label. But I don't know. That's a good question.
My research has indicated that obviously if it contains the nut, it will say which one, but if it may contains, you're right, it will just generalize
Hmm.
into the tree nuts. Do you mind kind of expanding more on that challenge a little bit?
Yes. So from what I understand, we're gonna go in and he has to be off his Zyrtec for a week so that his body doesn't falsely say, "Oh, I'm not allergic to this because the Zyrtec is helping me."
Hmm.
He goes in. They give him a serving size of a mixed tree nut, and then he has to eat it all. And then I think they watch him for like 2 hours
Oh.
and make sure he doesn't have a reaction, and then we have
Hmm.
to drive home and hope he doesn't have a reaction on the way home either.
Yeah.
So they said, you have to have an EpiPen with you to go
Hmm.
home, not to use while you're there, but to go home.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it's a lot of stress that is accompanying it.
Yeah. Is that going to be soon, or is that a little later down the
Next
road?
Friday, I think. Yep,
Okay,
next
so very,
Friday.
very soon.
Yes,
Very soon. Okay, well, fingers crossed that all goes well.
I hope so.
Um,
He
you
did not.
mentioned, oh,
Oh, sorry. He did not qualify for the peanut food challenge because he didn't pass his skin test. He was very, very reactant to it on the
too
skin.
sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned Zyrtec, and you said Benadryl in the beginning of the interview, and then you just mentioned EpiPen. Are those all the medications that you either are giving him, have on standby? How do you treat that?
So he also has asthma. So he
Oh, he's
does
got everything.
do, yeah, this poor kid, I'm telling you what. Environmental allergies, out the wazoo, asthma. So he does breathing treatments each night, which has exponentially helped with his breathing. He
Mhm.
takes Zyrtec nightly, and then he has the EpiPen in case, but also on his action plan. So they've gotten away from Benadryl now. They say not to
Oh,
use Benadryl anymore. When I first started with the allergist that I didn't quite like, he had said Benadryl. The new allergist says Zyrtec, and because I
mm.
guess Benadryl can potentially mask the symptoms and then cause you to fall
Oh,
asleep, which would be not ideal if you're having a reaction because you wouldn't be as aware of
yeah.
it. So now we do, if he were to have a reaction, we would give him, I guess, an extra dose of his Zyrtec, and then Epi if there were, if
Hmm.
it qualifies for an Epi.
Yeah. I've never heard of the Benadryl is new to me. I haven't heard of that before. That's very interesting. I wonder, do you know if that's a newer
I
kind of
think so.
revelation? Okay.
I think so.
Because
It was
I
kind of
even when I was
starting.
younger, yeah.
Yeah. I know they said it's like really bad to take on a daily basis. And then I think they've
Hmm.
kind of steered away from it being the first line of defense. I mean, you can still do it, but
Yeah.
um, on his action plan now it says just Zyrtec.
Okay. Interesting. So Zyrtec every night, you said, and then EpiPen on standby, evidently,
Hmm.
right?
Goes
Okay.
everywhere with us. We
Yeah.
are trying to train him now that we don't have to take a diaper bag. We say, well, what do we need? And he'll tell us EpiPen. And so we
Nice.
make sure to grab it and take it. It goes everywhere.
Nice. Yeah. I think everyone everyone in the nut allergy community would agree that if you don't bring your
Hmm.
EpiPen, you're not doing yourselves any favor, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. What would you kind of advise other parents in your position, maybe parents who are just finding out their kid has a peanut or tree nut allergy? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I would say try not to freak out. Like it's a lot. I feel like it changed our world a lot.
Hmm.
We had to just accommodate and modify everything that we did because we were
Hmm.
definitely we had peanut butter sandwiches all the time. We would, have apples and peanuts and
Yeah.
peanut butter, and so it was a definite change for us. And I think too, just being vigilant, like you just have to constantly be watchful and mindful of your surroundings. Like if we're at the
Hmm.
park, I have to kind of, if people are snacking, I just kind of like glance and see what they're eating.
Hmm.
We don't eat at park tables because the number one thing that people bring, peanut butter and jelly. And even we take almond butter, and I would hate to get almond butter on a table for someone who
Hmm.
has a tree nut allergy too. So we just take a blanket and we find a patch of grass, and that's,
Yeah.
the kids are excited because we get to do a picnic.
Yeah.
um
Nice. Nice.
I would also say just advocate. I mean, if I wouldn't have advocated to get that testing for eggs or tree nuts, we might have found out the hard way for tree nuts.
Yeah.
And it's just really scary in the moment
Yeah.
of, and especially at his age, he can't vocalize yet
Hmm.
if he's having a reaction. Like for instance, today we were out and about, and he said, "My neck's itchy," and I immediately was like, "What do you mean your neck's itchy? Your neck
Mm.
or your throat?" And he
Mm.
just doesn't understand. Well, it was just a dry patch here,
Mm.
but he just doesn't understand those things yet. And to tell me like, "Oh, my tongue feels funny," or "My throat is starting to close," like just that is what worries me the most, I think.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think teaching your kid early on, this is what we need to do to make sure that we're safe. And
Hmm.
these are the things that we need to check. And then also getting your friend group around you to really
Yeah.
embrace it. I mean, our friend group has been amazing. I have a friend who, if she is to watch him, she scrubs her entire house to make sure that there's no
Oh,
remnants of peanuts. Um,
that's awesome.
she makes sure she has snacks on hand that are safe for him. And it's nice to see other people just making sure my kid is safe.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's really neat. What have you learned? I imagine that I think you found me on Facebook, I assume.
Uh-huh.
Um, and does that mean that you're kind of on these nut allergy like parent groups, support groups?
Yes,
It,
100%.
so I would like to know, is there anything that you learned from those groups that you actually applied to your day-to-day life?
I think one of the biggest things was the may contain. I had no clue. I just thought,
Mm,
oh, if I read the label, it's safe.
yeah.
I had no clue that if there wasn't a may contain listed, that it could potentially be life threatening for my child.
Mm,
And I don't know, probably just like now that we're going into preschool, I'm really on there trying to get support on, what have other
right.
parents done? What have, how have they approached this?
Hmm.
And finding brands that are safe and
Yeah.
companies that are safe. That's been another big thing too, because sometimes it's the weekend and I can't call a
Yeah.
company because it's Saturday. And so
Hmm.
I'll look on there and see if there is a recent post from somebody who has called and use that. Not always,
Hmm.
because sometimes they're like 4 years old and I'm like, I don't really trust that. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing, is just finding community in that,
Hmm.
and having, if I do have something that happens, I can go on there and be like, what do I do? Obviously, if your kid has like hives and stuff, don't post a picture to Facebook though. Just follow their plan. But
Yeah.
for other, like when we had our playgroup incident, he touched something that somebody else had touched with peanuts, and
Mm,
that spurred me to say, guys, I think we need some protocol in place for this play group.
mm,
I'm not the only mom here that has a kid with a peanut allergy. And so that prompted them to not ban peanuts, but say, we can't have peanuts here.
mm.
And it's,
Yeah.
it's just not safe for the other kids. So I've
Yeah.
just learned I have to stand up for my kid. And
Yeah.
it's hard when I'm normally the pacifist and I don't like to call attention to things, but it's his
Mhm.
life. And I want to show him that he can stand up
Yeah.
and say, no, I have to be sure that this is safe for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one thing I've definitely noticed as I've pursued this is I didn't realize how strong and interlaced the community is, because everyone really has the same. Every the people with nut allergies, no one really wants the nut allergy, but
Right.
you play the hands you're dealt,
Hmm.
and it's almost like heartwarming to me to see how connected people are and sharing their experiences and make sure that others maybe don't experience what they experienced.
Right.
And hopefully one day, shameless company plug, that Mick's Got No Nuts will be that brand that everyone can trust to be that nut-free brand, because there really isn't much like that out yet.
Mm-mm.
Um, and that would be the dream, and hopefully we get there one day. But for now, I gotta talk to as many people as I can to get the idea of
Absolutely.
really understanding the community. And
And
so,
I will say, like, as far as protein bars, it's so hard. I mean, it's hard to find anything in a dedicated tree nut peanut facility. But my kid doesn't eat hardly anything. And so we're very limited on things. So it would be so nice to know, okay, he's getting a little bit of protein here, by
mhm,
eating this.
yeah,
And as he grows, to have that, and also just an on the go snack. I mean, there are just so little options. And I feel like he's going to get burnt out eventually on something because it's the one thing that we can have. And
hmm,
so I feel bad because we have so many options and he just doesn't.
yeah. What Just for my own market research now, what kind of flavors does your son like? Is he a chocolate fan, fruit flavored fan? Do we know? I got to write this down.
So he likes fruit mostly.
Oh, okay.
We do a lot of like banana muffins, so he likes banana
Oh, okay.
muffins. Chocolate sometimes,
Oh, interesting.
like I
Okay.
do the chocolate chips in there, but yeah, fruit
Interesting.
typically is
Okay.
the way to go. Anything sweet. He hates anything vegetable. He won't eat a vegetable to save his life. I mean, he
Yeah.
once touched a pea and gagged. So,
Oh, you know what? Side question. So if he's allergic to peanuts, is he allergic to all legumes? Because if you said he touched the pea and gagged, no.
I don't know. He won't eat um many vegetables at all, but
Okay.
peas have always been like a he has started eating green beans. He will not do a pea.
No,
He's
he
tried
won't do
it.
it.
Yeah, he won't actually eat it. Carrots, he won't. Corn, he won't. But we did do like a chickpea pasta one time, and it tasted awful. So we
Interesting.
just but I was a little bit nervous too with that,
Yeah.
but
Interesting.
he's not reacted to any of it.
Okay. Well, knock on wood. It continues
Yeah,
that way.
knock on wood.
Um, well, Sam, thank you so much. I want to, is there anything else that maybe you'd like to add or contribute to anyone maybe watching this or anything else you'd like to say?
I'm like looking at my notes. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, check the notes.
So one thing I will say to new
Yeah.
parents, because I forgot to add this, is that like food is not the only thing that peanuts and tree nuts can be hiding in. Um, Sunscreen, mulch, things like that that you wouldn't
Mm,
that's another thing I learned from the Facebook page is things that you wouldn't think to have to check. You still have to check because they
yeah.
don't necessarily have to include that since it's not an edible product. Um, but yeah, that's really the only other thing. We play it safe and we just do our best to try to keep him safe and teach him to keep himself safe.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what you have to do, right? And hopefully when he gets a little older, he can start to learn how to navigate that for himself.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it and just
Yeah.
appreciate your efforts. And we look forward to seeing them in stores and buying them.
Yeah, hope one day, one day. Well, Sam, thank you so much. If anyone watching has a question for Sam, Sam, I hope you'd be willing to answer any questions that people would
Absolutely.
have. Well, great. Well, Sam, thank you so much. Again, this has been the Nut Allergy Podcast. And if anyone wants to be on the show for the next episode, just find me on Facebook at Mick's Got No Nuts or Instagram or YouTube. So again, thank you, Sam, very much.
Thank you.